Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this first meeting of the Joint Standards Committee of this municipal term. My name is Bryn Roberts. I'm the Director of Governance, and crucially in this context, I'm the Monitoring Officer. I have the joy of starting this meeting up to the close of item 2. So can I first off start by asking for any declarations of interest? Councillor.
Thank you, Bryn. I will declare an interest in item 6 as I was a subject member of that complaint, so I'll obviously leave the meeting during the consideration of minutes.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any declarations? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Can we move on to item 2 then? Can we have any nominations for the appointment of Chair of Joint Standards, please?
Can I nominate Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. Does that find a seconder?
Chair, happy to second.
I think everybody seems to be happy to second to that. So can I have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Rowley, please? Thank you very much. I conclude that Councillor Rowley has now been elected as chair, and I shall turn the meeting over to him.
Thanks. Yes. Yeah. Councillor
And his name.
Whenever you change your service provider for parking, it will be created in form, like I said, the last 10 minutes work with it. My apologies for having this in
Welcome. Welcome, Joe. Thank you, members, for putting your trust in me for another year. I will endeavour to have a seamless transition from what we did in the past to what we're going to be doing moving forward, and I do appreciate your vote of confidence in that. What I will do, if I might just be allowed before we go to item number 3, which is the appointment of the vice chair. Again, I just want to welcome back those that have been re-elected, and also welcome 2 of our new members. Councillor Runciman, who has been a member of this committee in many years gone by, and is full of wisdom and insight that I'm sure she will bring to the joint standards. And so I do welcome Councillor Runciman. And there are no other changes. Those that have been on this committee are here again. So we'll move on to item number 2, which is the appointment of the vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair? Councillor Rawlings.
Chair, could I nominate Councillor Warby? It's tradition that the vice chair is a parish councillor.
It is.
And I think that would be an appropriate appointment. Thank you.
It is. Thank you very much, Councillor Rawlings. Do we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Chambers. I do need to ask, are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations I've not been made aware of? And could we just have a show of hands just to affirm that, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So Councillor Wilby, congratulations on being the vice chair of this committee. And again, just to bring members up to speed, it's actually written into our policy and procedures now that the chair is a City of York councillor and the vice chair is a parish councillor. So we've worked really well with our parish council colleagues. And I look forward to doing so as we move on. Item number 4 is exclusion of the press and public. Just to consider the exclusion. Sorry, Councillor Rawlings.
Sorry, Chair, just one little thing. The exclusion, the resolution is to exclude for item number 9. In this agenda, item 9 is the training plan. I think that's a typo. So before we approve it, I think we need to amend that to item number 11. Number 11. Which is the excluded items.
Yeah, you step ahead of me there. So yes, the exclusion of press and public looking at it, it's down the agenda as item number 9. It is actually item number 11. Do we need to have a vote on changing that?
No, I think that's a clear typo.
I would have thought so. Lovely. That's fine. So the other thing that I would say is obviously we want to exclude the press and public for obvious reasons when we look at the monitoring officer's report. But what I don't want to do is to then come back into into the public domain again. So it's just to make clear that if we agree to exclude press and public, anybody watching online, you will understand that when we go into private session, we will not be coming back into a public session. So just a vote of those happy for us to exclude the press and public for item number 11, not item number 9. Thank you very much. Item number 5 is the minutes of the meeting, the Joint Standards Committee meeting held on the 20th of April. Yeah. So, everybody comfortable with those that were present? Any? You can't, that's correct. For those that were there, yeah, okay, they're happy to approve those. Good. And then the minutes of the subcommittee. Thank you. Councillor Fisher, you're well ahead of me. I was just about to suggest that you step aside. So the minutes of the subcommittee held on the 30th of March. You got those? Yeah. Just a presence like that. So the problem we've got with this is that I think we only have Councillor Wardby and Joe. It is Mr. Lee. Scott, sorry. Sorry, Joe, didn't you? Because you were here as the IP, weren't you, on that one?
Yes, I'm happy it's not voting Mark for me, but at least confirm to our minutes after the record of what's the question.
Brilliant, Mark. Good. Okay. And I don't think we can actually vote on that, but if we take their vote as being unanimous, is that okay? I mean, because these two aren't really, so that's fine. Good. Yeah. They're both signed off. Item number 7. Oh, please, yes, sorry. Thank you, yes. He'd be worried, wouldn't he, that we're delving into something that we don't need to delve into. So let's get him back. Thank you, Councillor Fisher. So item number 7, urgent business. I've not been informed of any urgent business prior to my appointment as chair. Have you been notified? No. Okay, that's fine. And then into item number 8, which is public participation. Again, I've not been made aware of anybody that has prior to me being, no, that's fine. Thank you. I didn't think there would be. So that's fine. Item number 9, just an update on member training programme, and I'm going to ask the monitoring officer to speak to that. Yeah, Francis, please, if you can speak to that for us, please. Thank you. Oh, have you got
Thank you, Chair. The member induction programme, as you're aware, has been ongoing since the start of the municipal year. That's largely been planned by my colleague, the Head of Policy and Strategy, with input from members well in advance of the programme being consigned to a piece of paper. The aim of the programme was to make it very flexible for members, and the initial feedback that Claire Fowle has shared is that members have embraced that positively. They appreciated the opportunity to attend in-person events, to attend events remotely, and to be able to attend things by way of catch-up on the YouTube recording. So they were the 3 avenues for members to attend training, and that seems to so far have been well received. One of the other objectives of the member training programme was that it was spread over a period of time to avoid fatigue, essentially, for members being bombarded with a lot of information within a narrow window of time. Again, positive feedback to date that the staggering is working well, but that's to be reviewed, I think, after the programme has been concluded. I understand that feedback forms have been made available to members who have attended those sessions, but members can perhaps affirm whether that's right or not. But the whole programme clearly needs to be evaluated once complete, and we are only partway through the programme. I know some of the key training where it's compulsory before members sit on a committee, like licensing and planning, have taken place at the beginning of the session. Certainly the introduction and the code of conduct training was an early item, so that members had that comfort of knowing the parameters at an early stage, but certain other events are yet to take place in the programme, and a full evaluation exercise will take place at the end. Members may be pleased to know that actually it's proved to be a helpful training resource for officers as well. So the recordings that have been made available to members have also been made available to officers, and it's certainly for me a good value for money exercise that I make those recordings available to members of staff and legal services. So things like the licensing training, those who haven't previously supported licensing committee can certainly benefit from the same type of training. As members, so I think in terms of getting value back from the programme, we're doing that as well. So yeah, so far so good, I think, on the member training programme, but an evaluation at the end, and members will clearly be key in saying what they thought went well and didn't go well, so that it can be refined and improved in the future. But the concept of it, a staggered, flexible approach with the resources being banked on an online platform, seems to be an ethos that's been well accepted so far.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the to members before I ask my question. You may well ask it ahead of me. I'm also aware that on this committee we don't have any first-time councillors. We're all kind of re-elected, so I'm not aware. I've not had an in-depth discussion with my colleague about how they have fared as a new councillor. And maybe some of our colleagues that have got new members, first-time members, can maybe give us a little bit of feedback on how that's gone. But I want to open it up for members just to ask questions or clarifications. As I say, I've got one or two. Councillor Rawlings.
Since we have silence, it's not really a question, Chair. It's a slight reiteration. Over the last 4 years, this committee has worked hard on training, and it's been clear and minuted on a number of occasions that without the training, it's difficult to control the complaints that come forward, where people make mistakes without the knowledge base to avoid them. And it's critical to the whole of this committee's workings. So I'm really pleased to see that it's been bought into. I would like to know what the numbers are of sessions, particularly with the newer members. Although I'm putting a caveat on there, things change with time. It shouldn't be seen that just because somebody has done planning for the last 20 years, that they shouldn't necessarily attend a planning course, because they need to be up to date and move forward over the next 4 years of this administration. So the only point I would really make, apart from that reiteration, would be, can we make sure when we get to the work plan that a report comes back which has some kind of pictorial display of take-up rates? We don't need to know individuals, that's not what we're here for, but to see how people are buying in and give some feedback and results of the questionnaires that have taken place. I'll be much appreciated.
Excellent. Bryn, sorry, Councillor, just before I bring Councillor in, just for clarification, are any of the mandatory training that has to take place, are any of them mandatory that it's redone every 4 years? So we referred to.
So principally the licensing training is the one that members need to be conscious of. Licensing is the only committee where if members have not completed the training, they can be prevented from sitting. So even though our current code of practice in relation to planning requires that it is mandatory training before sitting, actually in law we can't prevent a member who's failed to turn up to that training from attending the meeting and participating. The only option we have with that is to try and educate them and encourage them to attend the training before coming along. Licensing is slightly different. As I say, we have the ability to prevent a member from sitting because they don't have the necessary up-to-date knowledge.
Right, and I think your key comment there was up to date. So if somebody had sat on licensing and was trained 4 years ago, do they need to resit that 4 years later, or is that still deemed to be up to date?
I'm not aware that there's a time limit on it, but I think the general principle would apply that, as you say, things change over time. Case law is constantly evolving with all of these areas, and therefore I would expect that members who sit on committees would make themselves available either for the direct training or for the electronic catch-up at the beginning of the municipal term, so that they know where we presently are in the state of decision making and it's the case law.
Good, thank you. Mr. Mungerman.
Thank you. It would be useful to know by group if anybody needs a gentle encouragement to attend a particular training, and I'm thinking of licensing, planning and standards. And I'm sure that there'd be somebody from each group who would do that gentle encouragement where it needed. But that would have to come to us not in minutes, it'd have to come to us confidentially so we can sort it out.
And that can certainly be arranged.
Thank you.
Good.
The magic word outside councillors would be CPD, continuous professional development. And in this context, you are professionals, and I would suggest you need to be continuously developed. And Bryn's just mentioned the issue. The documentation is available. Is there anything in the system which puts a marker in that people have gone back through and reviewed, an internal review process, an internal monitoring service? Because looking at it from the outside as a resident in the area, you would expect that councillors would not only take a training course, which is pretty good to me as an outsider, but would also accept a continuous need, even if it's just to sign a document every 12 months that says, of the committees that I'm part of, I have checked that I'm still okay to do this. Yeah. And when you get a major change, as Bryn suggested, not in licensing where he says a big problem, but even in something like planning, if you think you've had a really significant change, should there be an item on the planning committee agenda or an education committee agenda, which then reflects a statement, and you're all expected to look at these documents. We're not going to spend an hour in the education committee going through it, but it's key. So as a resident, it would be nice, it would be nice to think that, like the HR professionals would do with the staff within the organisation, there would be a view that there was continuous review about members' state of knowledge and review of it. And
sorry.
Right, two things. Firstly, we're not professionals. I'm not a professional counsellor. I do other things in my life and always have done for the last 24 years. Secondly, the council doesn't know what training we've done necessarily. I've been doing some LGA training. Yeah. Council doesn't know I've been doing it. I know I've been doing it. And for me, that's quite important, but it's not something I'm accountable to the council for. It's something I'm accountable to myself for.
If I can, because I'm being challenged on what I'm making as a statement as a member of the public, I used an analogy to CPD because it's the nearest I can get to what councillors do. I'm not saying you are professionals, but I am saying you should approach things in a professional manner. You do not have to be a professional to approach something in a professional manner. And the last thing I was going to add on to that sort of hazy outside and making views which may not necessarily go well is the public look at what's going on. And so Bryn makes a statement like, well, we expect people from planning to do something, but we can't enforce it. There is an issue about what is made available to the public to know what's going on, which is the recording, and which we've discussed previously of how the training is going.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So I'm going to let Bryn just come back on that. I think just to put some context on to the answers. I know Frances has got something as well that she maybe wants to flag up. So when we looked at the training and it kind of fell under our remit, it was never ever going to be a kind of a stick approach. It was always an encouragement that we as members of the council and parish councillors as well. It isn't just open to the City of York councillors, that councillors in general, under our auspices, are given the opportunity to ensure that they are trained to the right standards. When we discussed this previously, it was mooted that there'd be some sort of kind of register of who had trained and who hadn't trained, and that actually it was going to be potentially held within each particular group, and the group would have somebody within, whether it was the group leader or the deputy leader or whatever it might be, would be responsible for just ensuring that everybody within their group had done the training that they needed to do. So that's how I understood it was to be. I'm going to hand over to Bryn and possibly to Francis as well.
Yeah,
Thanks, Bryn.
So just to respond on the record keeping element of this, certainly those who attend the training in person will sign an attendance sheet, and that will be marked electronically onto our Milo system. Those who attend catch-up training will do so through the Milo system, which then records that they have attended. So there is an electronic record of those who've done the training. And we can obviously, we can look back at that as a series of parameters. So if we make it an annual training session, then you can check year on year. So that record does exist.
Good. Okay, Francis.
Chair, I was simply going to echo what's been said about the carrot and stick approach. It has been not a constant, but a frequent subject of discussion in Standards Committee, that the committee can perhaps better fulfil its function as the warning triangle at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. The deficit of training is also something that's been raised by certainly one of the IPs in recent comments. It was Mr. Gad, who is online today, in recent comments on a complaint. It was something he referred back to me and said, well, I would have one view if I was assured of the level of training that this person has had, and potentially another view if I knew it wasn't a deficit of training. If training had been offered and they had behaved in this way regardless, I might have a different view. So the knowledge of what training has been available, what's being taken up, it is important to be shared in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
One more comment, if I may. We can't start using sticks rather than carrots when people have got caring responsibilities, children or elderly relatives say, or they're working during the day. We can't expect them to take time off to do training. They may do it like I've been doing with the LGA online, or they may be doing it subsequently to the event that takes place, as Francis has said, but I don't agree with sticks. I'm quite happy with carrots.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we would concur as members around this table that we're all adult, grown-up people, and I think we respond far more to carrots than we do to sticks. I think one moment, Joe. So I think the principle of training was one that's been agreed, not just at this committee, but much wider. I think the benefits of that have been agreed and have been seen. I think it would just be good as we look through the work plan in a moment to see whereabouts we slot that in terms of monitoring how the training is going. It would be, we have round the table this afternoon, we have two deputy leaders of the two groups, or the two of the three groups that we have in the council. And certainly, I'm pretty sure that we can go back and make sure that those members that might need a nudge receive a nudge. What feedback would we give to groups? Is there a process by which we can feed back to groups as to who has or hasn't? In other words, I may not know whether I need to nudge my new councillor or not, unless I sit down and speak to them. And it's likewise for the Labour group and for the Lib Dem group.
There is a formal process, but certainly I can arrange for that information to be made available to both the group leaders or the group whips, whichever suits the group's more. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it would be good. Yeah, I think it would be good for it to be shared with groups. However, I'm inclined for it to maybe just come to group leaders when they have their group leaders meeting, just so part of that meeting, the monitor officer says, just so there's this number of people in the group that haven't had, and then the group leader can share that with their respective whip if necessary. That would be my suggestion, but Joe, sorry,
playing to some extent the devil's advocate here, but nevertheless, the group are perfectly satisfied with the group's performance is a statement which if the voters, if electors were told the councillors are perfectly satisfied with the way the councillors are behaving, might not in all circumstances suit. Now, you are describing things as having an element of stick, but describing them as carrot, but to actually say everything will be carrots, normally carrots only don't result in behaviour improvements where behaviour improvement is needed. The use of groups to resolve it is obviously the best way if there are issues. But if there were a major failing which ended up with a local government ombudsman or whatever involved, they might wonder about what the norms of behaviour were and how the norms of behaviour were managed.
Great. I hear your point, and we note that, but I think in terms of where we are at the moment with the training, I think we're pretty much there where we need to be. But I appreciate it. I am aware, obviously, that I keep forgetting we have another independent person that's joined us remotely. Sorry, Richard, do you have any comment? Because I know you made a comment previously. I'm just going to bring. Is he?
I'm here, Chair. Yes.
Sorry, Richard. Do you want to just make any comment if you'd like to? I don't want to exclude you. It's easy to forget because we don't have pictorially, so I just need to be nudged every now and then. But I'm aware that you'd had a comment about this recently. Any comments on this before we move on?
No, Chair. The only remark I'd make, and it may not be specifically about training, is that I wonder whether or not any consideration has been given to an exit survey for those councillors that have moved on, and what lessons we can learn from their experiences, be it training or communications or anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Richard. I think that would be a challenge for us to be able to do that. Councillors move on for lots of reasons. Many of them move on because they feel that their time in public services is finished and they want to move on to other things. I think it would be really difficult to try and do that. I'm getting nods around the table, but I understand the concept of what you're saying, Richard. But thank you very much. Any more on this? I do want to move on, and we're going to look at the work plan, and this will form part of the work plan anyway. So item number 10, review of the work plan. We deliberately, at the last meeting, tried to give ourselves a bit of a blank canvas in terms of what we do in the work plan moving forward. So there are a couple of things that I want to fit into there, and I'm open to suggestions from members. I think one of the things that we need to do, and we need to make sure it's in the work plan, is a full review of our policies and procedures when it comes to standards and the complaints. Myself and the monitoring officer have had conversations previously about the need to do this. And so what I'd like to do is to see a review of the policies and procedures, and whether that's a piece of work that as a committee you delegate to myself and the vice chair to sit down with the monitoring officer and then bring a report back. I'm more than happy to discuss it now if there's any particular elements that you want to see in that work plan, but I'd certainly like to be able to do that. I don't want to be exclusive, and I'm more than happy if anybody wants to join myself and the vice chair. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. There's a couple of things in particular. One is the differentiation between chairs and vice chairs and other members of the council, which I find is idiosyncratic, and I don't feel that's justified. Second one is I think there needs to be a filter at an early stage, so that we don't get a situation where we call assessment subcommittees to complaints that could never conceivably result in a breach of standards. Because I mean, I could give a personal example of that, but it's just wasting people's time. And I'm very pleased to see we now have 2 extra councillors on the committee, because I think it gives a bigger pool to fish from when we want to set up assessment or hearing subcommittees. And I think that's beneficial because it was a very small pool. But I think there are some areas where we reviewed it under the previous monitoring officer. I think we got most of it right, but there's a few little things that definitely need tweaking.
Great. Brilliant. And just for clarification, Councillor Fisher, a couple of times you mentioned about extra councillors. Actually, we had 5 City of York councillors last time. We have 5 City of York councillors this time. We haven't got any more. We're just now not proportionate.
Apologies, I forgot those.
No, so I'd like that. I'd like there to be more. I'd like an extra City of York councillor and an extra parish councillor if we could, but that's not in my remit. But I absolutely take your point, what you say. Councillor Runciman.
Just to say, some of us are both.
And likewise.
Yes.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, I'm
Yes,
I'm a
exactly.
parish councillor
Yeah.
on 2 parish councils.
Yes, I'm a parish councillor on 2
So
parish councils
there
too.
we go.
And a very long-standing one.
For punishment, absolutely. There we go. Any more for any more?
I'm none of those. But can I make a comment, which is, are you reviewing the cities, the parishes, or both? And do you need a scoping exercise before you get started and get buried in what you're trying to do?
So good point. I'm going to bring we want to no, sorry, that's actually your hand up there. What I don't want to do, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I think we spent an awful lot of time looking at this and rewriting the policies and procedures. I think the suck it and see model has worked really well for us. We've seen the good of the rewrite and we've seen the bad of the rewrite, and I think it's important that we sit down and we just review it with some real common sense and some past experience. The other thing that I would say as well is that we have a common code of conduct that's been adopted not just by the City of York Council, it's also been adopted by the majority. I'm looking at Councillor Fisher, the majority of parish and town councils, not all of them, and so our remit effectively would look at that, but we're not going to be.
If I can assist in that,
Please do.
because all this committee can do is look to review the procedures and the code of conduct adopted by the City of York Council, because we are not sitting as the parish councils. So that's the starting point we would do, and then we would look to say, we reviewed it, we consider this now to be a more appropriate model. We would encourage the parish councils to adopt it consequentially.
Yeah, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but any changes would have to go to full council.
Yes.
So
Yes, they would.
yeah.
I'm sorry, it's me again.
No, stop, please. No, we value we
Yorkshire-
value your experience.
Yorkshire Local Councils Association will review the code of conduct and the procedures for parish councils. It's not within our remit to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, just in answer to that, I mean, very, very valid point. In answer to that, we took the model code of conduct that effectively has been adopted by YCLA anyway, and we've just slightly amended it. So they are very similar in terms of how they are. Francis.
Chair, just for the minute, so when this item was originally introduced by you, Chair, it was the policy and procedures. So we're talking about Appendix 29 of the Constitution, which is how we handle the complaints.
Right.
Then the discussion expanded into the Code of Conduct. So I just want to be really clear, is it a review of the policy and procedure, which is what this committee has discussed previously?
Yes.
Or do you want to encompass the Code of Conduct itself?
Just the policy and procedures.
Yeah.
Forgive me if I didn't make that clear, and thank you for drawing that to my attention, Francis. Yeah, it is just for clarity, the policy and procedures. And again, any changes that we do recommend will go to full council for them to approve. Anyway, so in terms of, sorry, Councillor Rawlings.
Chair, yes, we went a little bit off piste really on that discussion, but for the policies and procedures, I'm quite happy that the chair and the vice chair are given a remit to look at that and then bring it back to the next meeting or an appropriate time period for us to consider and amend as such. I think this may well be not a return and tick and finish. It may well be over 2 or 3 meetings of backwards and forwards between what will effectively be a working group of the chair and the vice chair in order to come forward with some more appropriate proposals.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking, anybody else has any comments to say? Councillor Wood, you're looking at me really kind of confused. You are the vice chair, so I'm assuming that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay with that. You can't withdraw now. It's and obviously we'll work on it. So I just want to look at kind of the work plan. So the next meeting is 21st of September. I'd like us to have a preliminary report back to you guys for the 21st of September, if that's doable. And again, as Councillor Rawlings has mentioned, we may have to then just flip it back to the working group just to tweak it and then bring it back in November. Bearing in mind that then it's probably, I think if we approved it as a committee in November, that would still be December for council, wouldn't it?
Potentially, although we'd have to look into whether or not it also had to go to AMG.
Fair point.
because
Yeah.
it's an amendment to the constitution.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But I mean, either way, we're looking at the back end of the year or early part of next year. Although February isn't a place to put. Yeah, no, but so in the first instance, September, we'll have. And can I just have a show? Is everybody happy for myself and the vice chair to be involved in that? Okay. Do we? Forgive me. Do we need the involvement of the IP in that one?
I think it doesn't hurt to have an IP involved simply because it gives that external perspective on the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just ask either Richard or Joe if either of you might be available to join that working group?
If call one of the servants, you should say the same thing. We need somebody, I'm sure, who
Yeah.
volunteer according to time.
Yeah, we go. Is that all right with you, Richard? That between you and Joe, we managed to put one of you in.
Yes, of course, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. So just for the minutes, myself, the vice chair, and an IP, and we'll report back on the 21st of September meeting, and it will be a review of the policy and procedures. Thank you very much. In terms of that 21st meeting and the work plan kind of moving forward, does anybody else have any other issues that they think or topics that they feel we might do? Any advice from the monitoring officer or the deputy?
Chair, we may just refer back to the earlier discussion where we said that we'd have some report taken on the training plan, particularly if we can make that report pictorial and breaking it down so that it shows take-up rates without necessarily having any individuals or even groups, to be honest with you, because I think that would be very unfair and might put that into a political spectrum, which isn't the intention of this committee, I'm sure.
Yeah. Francis.
It was a thought that came from the ambulance and warning triangle scenario, and it was around publicity. So it's not just training, publicity, and we've discussed this at committee before as well. It was the LGA's civility in public life and striking that right balance between ensuring that member conduct is what citizens would expect, but actually sometimes members suffer from citizen conduct not being what they would expect. Encourages councils to sign up to a pledge where they have, certain standardised publicity, which is basically inviting members of the public to say, look, we're serving and we're doing that to the best of our ability and sincerely. But when you interact with us, can you do so in a civil way? It's as simple as that. So it's whether the members want to hear some more about that LGA programme, whether they want to hear from the comms team about whether that's something that could be incorporated into our materials. But that's an off-piste comment that I've thrown in there. It does follow on from us talking about civility in public life previously, but I thought it was worth just bringing up again.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really useful. Whether it's the 21st or of September or the 21st of November meeting, bearing in mind that there's two items that have now been added to the 21st. If we look at the training and also the review of the policy and procedures, whether we look to have the presentation from yourself or other officers on the 21st of November meeting might be a better one. I'm just looking for kind of nods of assurance around the table. I think it's a really, really good point that Francis has made, and I personally would like to see that in the work plan. Yeah. Okay. I think we really only need to look at the next couple of meetings, other than the things that are normally within there anyway. Does anybody have any other items that they feel we need to include in the 21st of September or the 21st of November meetings? If not, we will move on. Okay.
Now it's speaking the Breton public.
Yeah. So I had hoped that Councillor Pavlovic would have returned by now, and what I would have done was would have welcomed him as a new member of this committee. He's not here to welcome, but those that are watching online, welcome to Councillor Pavlovic when he does eventually come back. And also we've also got Councillor Lomas, who is a member of this committee, who I believe is being subbed by Councillor Kilbane this afternoon. So again, I would have just welcomed that. So we're going to go to exclusion of the press and public. So I'm going to look to our IT colleague to give us the thumbs up when that is. Oh, sorry, forgive me. No, before we do that, sorry, Ben. We just do need to look at the monitoring officer's report in the public domain, the one that has been redacted. So sorry, if we can just have a brief overview, Francis, of that. No, don't worry. So this is the public.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The public report, as you know, is limited in terms of the details that are disclosed. On the public report, we're aware that there is an ongoing, relatively old investigation. It's a 22 investigation, which is reported as continuing to be under investigation, and a draft report awaited. In fact, that draft report is now in existence. Further case references, 3 of in assessment stage. Again, can't disclose any details of those in public session, but there will be some updates to give in terms of the progress of those cases. And the final case mentioned in the public report at paragraph 5 is that there will be a request for one of the new complaints to go to a joint standards assessment subcommittee. That will fall to a report in due course. The recommendation will be made to a standard subcommittee about what happens to that complaint. But it's a paragraph 5 case, which paragraph 5 has been raised as one of the procedural elements which is to be reviewed.
Okay. I just have one question, just for clarification for the press and public. Any outstanding complaints against members who are now no longer members? Are they on this list, or have they been?
No, they would fall away.
Right. So, right. Okay. So I was thinking of it, and we were looking at a previous list. So do we know of any that have fallen off? I think that's what I'm trying to, without going into names.
I don't know of any that have fallen off. I think it's right to say there are none that have fallen for that reason, but they would not qualify as a valid complaint because they have to be against a serving councillor. So we know that they would not pass the filter.
Okay, and that will be the same for parish councillors as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So to open it to members, any questions on the closed complaints log? Councillor Kilbane.
On the open.
Actually, on the open, forgive me, yes, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Francis. Just on open cases, point number 3, expects to complete a draft report by the end of January 2023. Is that a typo, or is the report complete, or?
The report is now complete in draft.
Okay, and sorry, but just to my understanding is that the reason for the delays has basically been staffing issues. Are those issues now resolved?
Improved situation in terms of staffing, and hence the report's now available in draft.
Okay. Anything else on the open log, Councillor Rawlings?
Chair, I'm going to jump in there and just pick up on this point. We've got an opportunity here. What happened in the last administration and the administration before, in fairness, was we got a build-up of cases as time goes on. Because at the beginning, you get a clearance of all the ones where the members haven't been re-elected, they stood down. So you have the lowest numbers. And what's happened in previous administrations is that we've never caught up with the staffing level in order to keep up with the increasing cases that the administration progressed over the 4 years. So I'm just making a point that it's really, really important that with their staffing in place, that we keep on top of these, because building it up and delaying it, a number of people around this table have at some case quite rightly gone through this procedure, and dragging out the time it takes is not a nice position for anybody to put in. Whether they have actually committed anything or not becomes almost irrelevant. So please, let's fill these vacancies and let's keep on top of the numbers.
Chair, I was simply going to say that apart from there being staffing vacancies or absences, There have been efforts made now to expand the pool of people who are capable of carrying out investigations through training, through inviting a larger number of members of staff to participate in the standards process, and actually some of the training that members have received, that's been served as an introduction to those members of staff who have got an interest and have got the skill set to be able to complete investigations. So in terms of the names that are put forward for future investigations, you will see me drawing from a wider pool of staff, so that will go some way. Bryn may have some.
And also I understand that we just have got the option, should we ever need to go externally as well, assuming it's cost effective.
Cost effective is always a challenge when you go external. I have seen reports cost upwards of £20,000 a time, which becomes quite eye-watering. I think the other comment that I would make, adding on to what Francis has said, is it is of course the case that all of these investigations are part of a competing workload for an inevitably reduced workforce as the council contracts. So we do as much as we can, but I think we do things as quickly as possible, but they are part of an overall workload. It would be delightful to have 1, 2 or 3 people just dedicated to this, but we just can't staff that.
Chair, I just
Yeah,
do
please.
feel though I still need to reiterate, we've got an opportunity now where there are only, I think, 5 open cases. It would be a shame if we don't take that opportunity to keep on top of it with appropriate levels of staffing, rather than go back to the situation we had just before the election, where we were probably up to 15 cases.
And we will do our best.
Chair, I would simply acknowledge the comment that's been made. As a lawyer, I'm going to entirely agree with, natural justice demands that an investigation is dealt with within a reasonable time frame. There is absolutely no resistance to that argument from me, and I completely agree.
Yeah. Do we have any loose service level agreement timings in terms of what we would expect? I think it would be good for a member, be he or she a City of York council member or a parish council member, to know what our agreed standards are in terms of timescales.
Chair, I think this is one of the things to revisit in terms of the review of the procedure.
Yeah.
What the procedure says is 3 months. Now, if the paragraph 5 is triggered, i.e. it's somebody whether either the subject member or the complainant is a chair or vice chair, or there's another couple of categories, so it's a vast array of people, that immediately triggers a subcommittee. To convene a subcommittee and prepare a report for a subcommittee, you're probably going to get through month 1 already. That leaves 2 months for an investigation. Don't forget that investigation means preparing a report, sending it out for sending it out in draft for comments. So as much as a reasonable timescale is required by natural justice, we are up against it on a 3-month timescale. Having said that, if the committee wants to set some expectations in terms of the scale of investigation, the depth they would expect a report to go into, that might assist, because at the moment we have a blank canvas, and every lead that we're given, the investigating lawyer might feel duty bound to explore that lead. And there have been cases, and I think the report that is very delayed that's before this committee is one where somebody said, well, at the last minute we want you to go away and look at this extra piece of evidence. And if we have an indication from the committee, look at what you think is reasonable, that you've been alerted to initially, and if someone doesn't mention it at the first stage and then tell you 3 months later they want you to look at it, you don't have to. Obviously, we can make improvements in timescale. So I do think the process does need to set an indication of length of investigation, but we need to be realistic about what that length is.
I think it should form part of the review that we do as a working group anyway. And again, I'm also mindful of the fact that depending on how complex the report might be, and how many individuals needs to be contacted or interviewed or whatever you may do in terms of the process, that can frustrate the writer of a report or the investigating officer. There's lots of things that can happen. But again, should there be a framework in place whereby, if there appears to be a deliberate attempt to delay, be that vexatious or not, there needs to be some kind of framework whereby this committee can go back and can challenge that, whether it's through the chair or whether, I don't know, because maybe we can look at that. Yeah, Councillor Gawain.
Thanks, Chair. I think, in terms of meeting the demands, as it were, through solicitor, the other side of that is the supply side, isn't it, of cases. And I think we need to bear in mind that, as is nearly always the case, the majority of cases do come from parish councils. About 70% of the current list is from parish councils. So there may be a bit of work to do around there. I know we've said this before, but I think it's worth keeping on the agenda in terms of why we're getting so many complaints from parish councils. Councillor Fisher's suggestion of a filter may have some impact on that as well. So we need to look at, what is the causing the complaints to get into this process. And also, typically we see the same names coming up again and again. So maybe some work with those individuals too may be helpful in terms of controlling, trying to make sure that the demands that are put upon our scarce resources are not disproportionate.
Yeah, very valid point and one well made. Councillor Rawlings.
Whilst I don't agree with the comments made by Councillor, don't disagree with the comments made by Councillor Kilvane, I feel that I do need to just defend the parish councils a little bit on that. There are only 40 odd City of York councillors, where there are 10 times that number of parish councils. So actually, when the last time I did the sums, the number of complaints against city councillors was proportionally greater. But nevertheless, the point is well made.
Good. Okay. So I'm going to move us on, assuming that there's nobody's chomping at the bit to speak on the open log. We are now going to exclude the press and public. I will ask my IT colleague here to shut the cameras down. Thank you for those that are watching or that are watching on catch up. We look forward to seeing you again on the 21st of September.